and basically say, this is what we want the city to look like. And then if you elect people that buy into that same philosophy, then you won't have every 4 years when you get a new group of people, you get a whole new concept, you get a whole new way of doing things, but everybody can say, okay, this is our plan, this is where we're going, this is what we want to do, this is what I embrace, this is how we move forward. Even when you have a comprehensive plan, before you can expend funds, we're supposed to take that to the Planning and Zoning Commission to make sure that those things line up with the plan. So it also helps to give you direction to make sure your spending is in line with what you said that you want to do.
So if there's a project that the city needs to do and it's, this year is it would be unbudgeted. So it's not something that critical that has to be done right now, but say next year it could be put into the budget as a budgeted item. How does that process work? Say there's a project and project A needs to happen next year. We know it's going to cost $50,000. How do you work that into the budget when you do your budget processes at mid-year or wherever it is, whatever time frame that is?
Well, last year was the first year that we had an operating budget and a capital budget. So that would be something that would go into your capital budget instead of your operating budget. Your capital budget should be 5 to 6 years. And what you do is that you take all of your projects and then you try to line those projects up based on need as well as the financing that you need to do to be able to get it to take place. So now we're moving those things to the capital budget so that they can, because they don't tie into really the operating budget. So what we will do, or what we're doing now, we're just finished receiving the operating budgets for each department. We are currently working on making sure that we have a 10% cushion this year. So our revenue would be 10% more than what our expenses would be. Some people say, well, why do you use 10%? Because that's what the state code says. State code actually says that a city is only supposed to budget 90% of their expected revenue for that particular year. So we're trying to make sure that we fall in line with what's in the Code of Alabama 1975 to be able to do that. But we would put that in the capital budget, and anything that's over $15,000 is now being put in the capital budget instead of being put in the operating budget.
And who manages those projects up till budget time, or up to the time that you start setting the budget for next year?
When you say manage them?
So you got 15 projects that came in through over the year that you're going to set for next year's budget. Those items are past resolutions or ordinances, but they're just not going to get funded right now. Who manages that to make sure that they get into the budget at the end?
The council.
The council. Okay.
At the end of the day, the council is responsible for approving the budget and allocating the financial resources for your operating budget as well as your capital budget. So my job is to make sure that I do the research, get all the information, and then the mayor, I give it to the mayor goes over, and then he presents it to the council. But once we give it to the council, it's left up to the council to decide how they want to allocate those resources, how they want to line projects up, how they want those projects to be financed, and how they want it to be managed.
Right. Are you supposed to have a 10% buffer even if you have 20% saved up in savings accounts and all?
Yes.
So it doesn't matter how much you got in savings, you still need a 10% buffer?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Because this is what has happened to us in the past. The last budget cycle, we spent 99 cents out of every dollar. So when you have an unbudgeted item, guess what happens? You go over budget. Because you can only get $1 out of the dollar. You can't get $1.05 out of a dollar. But every time you add an unbudgeted item to your budget, you're spending money that you do not have. Or you're spending money that you built up in your cash reserves. One of the reasons, and everybody in your handout, you received a 4-page letter from S&P that explains why the city's rating was increased. One of those things is because they were impressed with our cash balances. In your personal finances, cash is king. And when you're dealing with the city finances, cash is king. So they were very impressed with the cash balances that we had as a city. But if we keep spending $1.10 for every dollar, eventually we began to cut into those cash balances. Once we cut into the cash balances, then we get a downgrade on our rating. Once we get a downgrade on our rating, now the money is more expensive to borrow. Because the money is now more expensive to borrow, then our debt that we have to pay every year towards the general obligations that we have begin to increase. So you can see that there's a domino effect. So when we're being frugal, I'd rather say frugal than being tight, there's a reason behind it, and it's not just because you don't want to see something take place, but there's a domino effect. Every time you approve something that we hadn't set the money aside for, it creates a domino effect that runs all the way through the other areas of the city finances. And then when the next time we go for a bond rating, and everybody's saying, well, why are we down to an A? Then we will know because we've cut into our cash balances by spending for items that we did not budget for during the fiscal year.
Just a follow-up question. On unbudgeted items, this council has adopted a process in order to pay for those unbudgeted items, which you take them out of somewhere else in the budget. In other words, you're taking that money that was budgeted and now applying it to this unbudgeted item. How often does the council have unbudgeted items where they don't have a process to pay for it?
A lot of times the items are not unbudgeted, and that's why I laugh when I'm in this seat sometimes, because whenever we have a contract, we have to bring it before the council, and the council has to approve it. So a lot of times when you see 40,000 here, 50,000 there, the money's already been budgeted, but you got to approve the contract. So you have to bring it before the council to be able to do that. But we don't have a lot of items that are unbudgeted. I mean, the council began to do a good job by, if it was an unbudgeted item, they made sure that it came from some special revenue fund that we couldn't use but for that particular item that was an unbudgeted item. So that's a very good thing. I mean, like we have gas tax 4, 5, 7. We have E911 funds that can only be used for that. We have funds that comes through the Alabama Capital Improvement Fund that can only be used for improvement. So we have a lot of funds that come through that are restricted and can only be used for certain things. So they've done a good job of being able to do that. But we just wanted to make sure that we, if you don't have something in writing, a lot of times it's not a reality. So that's why in the new financial policies, we made sure that we had something in writing that we could always refer back to that particular item. And if you all want to know what that number is, when I send you a copy of the financial policies, it's number 26. I think we have 41 different things on the scorecard that we would track, but number 26 or 27 is the one that deals with how we should handle those items. So we do need to increase the taxes. I mean, a lot of times we hear about the water department. We're losing money in the water department. Do you all know how many increases we've had in the water department over the last 14 years? You can go a little bit higher. 2. We've had 2 increases in 14 years. The last one was in 2008 that we increased the rates. So that's been how many years? But within that 6-year period, salaries for the employees have gone up. The electricity that runs the wells has gone up. The cost of chemicals to treat the water has gone up. The regulations that the federal government has put in place that cities have to do over a period of time, all of those things have increased the cost for providing water. But yet, we take pride in having some of the lowest water rates in the county. So you have to be able to balance it. And my philosophy that if we're providing a service, we should at least break even on the service. There's no need of providing a service and you're going in the hole for providing the service. The other service that we provide is garbage. When do you think the last time we had a garbage rate increase?
No idea.
2008. It's the last time we had a garbage increase, but the landfill fees has gone up. The fuel has gone up. I was just talking to Frank Pennington, who handles all of the fuel. We were sitting down having a conversation about, diesel fuel that he's ordering now wasn't as much as it was even a year ago, not alone 6 years ago. And also, we don't even charge anything for picking up trash. So when you see having somebody professionally cut down a tree, but you don't say anything about it because you don't want to be a bad neighbor, but yet we got to run to the dump twice to be able to take all of that stuff that professionally they've had somebody to cut down. That's costing you money because we have to find money from somewhere to be able to pay for that. So we don't even charge for the trash. We only charge for the garbage. And we spend a lot of money in picking up all of this stuff and taking it to the dump for when we do it as citizens or when we have somebody else to come in. So hopefully I have convinced you all about the no new taxes theory. I've been talking to Brad about how can we find a stable source of income to be able to replace a lot of our capital equipment. And Brad has been singing this song for a long time. I know he didn't have anybody jump on the bandwagon with it when he first began to talk about it. But one of the things that Brad has mentioned is about increasing and this is a bad word, y'all. It's not a curse word, but it's a bad word, increasing our property tax. Because, we got skag mowers that's 20 years old. We got garbage trucks that's 15 years old. We got a 75-foot aerial ladder truck at the fire department that's 30 years old that can't even pass the test anymore. We have a lot of stuff that's, we just make ends meet and we just pray a lot and patch up a lot and hope we can continue to do that. But if we're going to be a progressive city, we can't continue to do that. So if you all want to support Brad and his idea, I can support you now, Brad, because I'm not a politician.
Well, it's just, if you don't mind me making a comment, it's just that the reason I was looking at that is because we are behind Lipscomb, I think it was Morris, Kimberly, all these small cities in Jefferson County. We were lower in property tax than they are. And we're not even close to Trussville, Birmingham, even some of these surrounding cities in property tax. We're almost in the same situation with our water, where we're the lowest in property tax as we are in our water rates. So what does that do for us? That's how we got in this situation, where we need to replace this equipment, but we don't have the funds to do it.
And what it's going to take is it's going to take city leaders explaining this to the citizens of Irondale that, we're not just raising taxes, property taxes, water fees, garbage fees and stuff just arbitrarily. These things have to go for our infrastructure. Our water system needs to be some serious system maintenance needs to be done on these things. Our fire, water, police, and rescue services, need new equipment that we utilize as citizens. But it takes a strong leadership in order to get that information out and to talk to the citizens about it, so that people don't just start grabbing torches and pitchforks and coming down here to the city hall.
Yeah, we have officers now that are responding to calls in cars they got 200,000 miles on.
I've talked to James about what it would take to get we've talked about long-term programs to get to a point where we can replace police cars, fire trucks, all that everything for police and fire. It only takes 2 meals in property tax. 2 meals. That's $20 on a $100,000 home.
I don't disagree with you, but you know, it's notoriously difficult to get that approved in the state of Alabama.
Well, Trussville just passed one for their school
You know,
system.
too?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll keep on, like I said, the whole goal was to convince you that no new taxes is a myth. You've heard from Brad, and you've heard some of the stories that I've shared with you about the things that we have here. So it does take risk, it's gonna take some forward thinking, it's gonna take some education. That's why we're gonna have the financial town hall meetings every quarter to make sure that we are transparent and we educate you about what's going on, about the finances of the city. You can feel free to call me at any time. You can send me an email. Don't stop by, but you can. Send me an email or either set up an appointment to be able to sit down and talk about some of the issues. Even if you see some of the things that are on the agenda you don't understand. I would say at least call first. I mean, I have a lot of the information because they do give it to me before I put it on the agenda. So if I don't know the answer, at least I can point you to the individual that has put it on the agenda. Then you can have a conversation with them and talk to them to find out why did they do why did they do what they did with that. So the last thing, let me finish up my last thing.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Last one is just cut expenses. Everybody believes that government can just cut expenses. You waste a lot of money, just cut expenses. But do you know that when an employee gets their year end with the city, then that's basically, the city can't fire that person. 80% of our expenses is tied to salaries and benefits. But we have no control over that. So even the council can't create a resolution and say we want to cut everybody's salaries, or we don't want to cut stuff in half. Now they can decide they may want to create a RIF, which is a reduction in force, and get rid of a whole department or something like that. Now they can do that. But because the salaries are set by the personnel board, the steps are set there, one of the things that the city's done, even when things have been tough, they've always honored the merit increases that the employees are to receive. Some cities stopped giving their employees merit increases. I think Birmingham just had a discussion about should we give the employees a raise or should we give them their merit increases. But the city has always backed the employees and make sure that they receive their merit increases. So it's very hard to cut expenses. A lot of times we're up under a contract for a certain period of time. You can't get out of the contract. It may have been a good contract 2 years ago, but it may not be a good contract today. Right now, we're getting ready to put out an RFP to be able to do maintenance on our tanks, water tanks. Well, that contract runs about 10 years. You want to make sure that when you sign the contract, that you're getting the things that you need, but you also need to make sure that you're going to be able to receive the things over the next 10 years as well. So sometimes you have contractual obligations that you can't get out of. You have employee salaries that you can't reduce. So it's not as hard sometimes when you say just cut, expenses. One of the things that I did this year when I gave the department heads their budget is that everybody's budget was cut. And it was very hard for them to understand because they said, hey James, everybody just been talking about how great our rating is and how much money we got in the bank. Why are you cutting our budgets? I said, well, that's the best time to cut it is when we have money in the bank. And because we are financially stable, we don't want to wait till we get to the point where we have to do it. We want to be able to do it while we have the freedom to be able to do it. So that was hard for them to understand that because everybody thought that they were going to get new money. Hey, we got Mercedes coming. Hey, we got the new automobile tax that we increased from 1% to 1.5%. That is producing $90,000 extra a month. But the goal is not to spend all $90,000 just because we have that coming in. Because you're going to have some rainy days. I mean, one of the things about our city, we are concentrated in one industry. A lot of our sales and use tax comes in from one industry. Can you all identify what is that industry?
Cars.
Cars. So what about if people decide we're not going to buy Porsche, BMWs, Lexus this year? Then what do we do?
We need a Chevy and a Ford dealer.